Each day, hour, minute, we get closer to Jesus' return. We just do not know when, and that means only God himself knows. Even the early Christians thought Jesus was coming back in their time. Many people throughout our past thought they figured out the time. And today, we are still waiting, some of us happily, and others totally afraid. Last Tuesday was the craziest presidential election I may ever see in my lifetime. Some people may even think this is the beginning of the end. Several cities in the United States had protesters leaving a destructive path through the cities. Does this scare you or make you nervous? Fear of the uncertainty, not able to plan, feeling complacent, having no control. We cannot control all the crazy things going around in our lives. But the one thing we can control, which the gospel teaches us today, is our testimony. Our testimony. Not our parents, not our grandparents, and not the preacher down the street. Our testimony. Do you really understand what it means to be able to give our testimony? What are a couple of examples of testimony? One who can give evidence based on personal and immediate knowledge of a fact, event, or experience. The Christian concept of witness adds to the popular notion the idea of a religious experience to which a believer testifies by his life, words, and actions, and thus gives inspiration and example to others by his testimony. The Christian witness is also the element of courage in giving testimony, either because others are not happy about it or because they are openly hostile to the message of faith being proposed. So how do we give our testimony? What was my life like before God? What did my life revolve around most? How did life begin to let me down? When and how did I find God? What was my first reaction to God? Did my life and attitude change after finding God? Do I share stories with others of how God has been there for me? How about your testimony? Explain how Christ has changed your life. Is it more meaningful with Christ? Giving it all to God with complete trust. One way many of us can give testimonies is our own stories when we encountered Christ. Many of you have heard me giving testimony, especially through my homilies or at RCIA, Alpha, or just talking. Giving examples of answered prayers that increased your faith. My prayer to God asking if I'd ever meet that special girl, and there she was at that bus stop. Love at first sight. Raising a family. How did Annette and I accomplish this? Working a year without getting paid. How did we survive? In a boat, out of gas, in total darkness, no support, and my prayers being answered by God at Lake Shasta with Mr. Bass. Joining choir at the age of 40, and from these box seats, God began my spiritual journey that led me to becoming a deacon. I have shared many stories of God coming into my life at times I really needed him, or to give me a push in the right direction. Understanding what a Mass is really all about, especially the Eucharist. Speaking of which, a couple weeks ago at the All Souls Mass, I was serving with Father Brandon. And whenever a priest elevates the cup and looks up, I always stare at that cup because that's the moment God is present. And I always look at the cup to see if anything on there, signs, lighting, anything that would kind of get my attention. And for the first time, and I've talked to Father Brandon about this, but the first time as he's holding that cup and I'm standing behind him, kneeling behind him, I was looking at the cup, I saw an image of a lamb, a face of a lamb. I twice shook my head, looked at it again, and it was an image of a lamb. I wanted so badly to tell Father Brandon, do not put the cup down, do not put it, because I wanted some people to come up and see this, because not everybody sees this. This doesn't happen all the time. It's the first time it's ever happened to me, but I really wanted to. So there was other 2 times that something like this happened to me, doing the same thing. One was when I was doing the amen when I was first a deacon, and I was holding the cup during the amens, and the cup fogged over, which first time it ever happened to me. And I was so nervous, I thought I was going to drop the cup. But I remember looking at it, and it was a fog going around the cup. You know, it kind of fogs up on the top part. Now understand, this doesn't happen all the time. I mean, this has only happened to me 3 times in 3 years as a deacon. So it's really a great feeling. But what you're hearing from me today is my testimony that God is here and present, especially through the Eucharist, the bread and blood of Christ. We all have stories or life experiences of God's presence in our lives. We just need to write them down for future generations. We need to share them first with our wife or husband, our children, family, friends, communities, and especially with someone who is struggling with their faith. Write down your testament. List all the times God was there for you. Listen to the testimonies of those around you, especially the testimonies of the poor, the widows, those grieving, and those who are searching for hope. In our crazy life today, we need to read these stories back to ourselves. We need to remind ourselves that God is here with us. So when our faith is low and doubt is creeping in, reread your own testimony you are keeping for yourself. Share it with others to help their faith and help them discover God. What is the definition of our Catholic faith? A belief in God's testimony. We don't need to know when the end of times is coming. All we are called to do is live our faith, share our stories, and let God take care of the rest. Our testimony is the story of our own faith journey. We know it because we have lived it. The love Jesus showed us in his sacrifice is the entire example we need to be inspired to share our story, our testimony to others. Our lives lived in our Catholic faith. Amen?